Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to this, the 19th, and probably one of the most surreal and possibly the most amusing and bizarre Madaxeman.com lockdown podcasts. We've got the normal gang, but we've also got a special guest appearance and a showstopper from Andy's wife, with a wonderful contribution. We also have all the regular features. We've got the quiz, we've got Napoleonics, we've got army list discussions, we've got painting, we've got gaming things to do. We've got all sorts of weird and wonderful interesting topics to talk about in great detail, but no great depth really whatsoever. So sit back, put your ears on, listen to the podcast.
This means war.
Welcome everybody, welcome all 7 little faces on screen, one of which is mine, I guess, to the 19th, the penultimate in this limited special series, although 20 episodes of 2 hours of a time doesn't feel particularly limited, long as lockdown has been in the lockdown podcast series. So we've got the full gang of 7 here again, and I'm told that we will, despite rumours, have the full gang of 7 in our next week's sort of final celebratory valedictory episode as well. And I guess we've now got almost a traditional, as we creep towards the end of this, we've got a traditional way of starting, which is to answer some of the questions from last week that we failed to ask, or failed to even talk about possibly. So first of all, very contentious subject. In the future, if you can imagine that, will face-to-face gaming ever really replace online play? Simon, what do you think?
Oh, tough choice. Yes.
Yes, you think so. Mr. Saunders, do you think real gaming might replace the online play that we all do now? Or is there a lot of downsides to it?
Having played a reasonable amount of online, I'm itching to play proper toy. I miss the toys.
Right. Andy Finkel, are you getting a scratchy itch when you think about meeting people in the flesh?
Definitely, yeah. I think that face-to-face gaming is a lot less fiddly than online, but online's good in some ways because it means you can interact with people in different countries, and who knows when we'll be able to travel around easily in the foreseeable future.
Well, that's a whole set of serious answers. I better come to Adam next, really. What do you think? Is real world going to replace online gaming?
I think it will, because ultimately face-to-face wargaming is a social hobby. So the face-to-face thing is sort of that, which is kind of weird when you think about it, because when you look at the average social skills of your average wargamer, it's really weird that they're doing something that's a social hobby. But
social hobby, yeah, indeed.
There you go. Yeah. That's what it is.
Well, on the subject of Peter, coming to you for no particular reason, what do you think of online gaming versus?
I really enjoy online gaming. I really like it. It's really great. It's got its place, especially if you can't get to certain places. But you can't beat playing face-to-face against someone and seeing the sheer look of terror in their eyes when you put down that wall of knights that's about to charge the hell out of them. And they go, oh, shit, I chose the wrong list. And you just sat there cackling.
So is that why you like playing your kids?
You your children something awfully. Is that what you do to your kids?
Well,
no,
that's why my child, as Simon knows, turns up with elephants and knights now.
Right.
And he wins.
Yeah.
Tamsin, what about you?
And he has great fun doing it. But no, it's having
he's
that
still
social...
going. I'm sorry, he's still going. We just
Give him 5 minutes.
mention the word knights. He's still going. Off we go. Peter,
I'm just going to get a
the floor is
drink.
yours.
When
The
you
floor
put
is
that
yours.
banter, like we've got now, where someone sat behind or Simon rocks up finally late and everyone just groans, and then you're having a game and, then Dave leans over and says, you don't want to be doing it like that. You want to be doing it like this. You missed that sort of social element.
Right, okay. Then.
We interrupt this rant to bring you a podcast.
Yes, indeed. So Tamsin, to wrap us up, do you think meeting people face-to-face might be a future? Is it the new development?
Well, compared to current, yes. I think
it could be the new way
people
forward.
will still want to meet face to face for gaming.
Okay, excellent. What about the crossover between gardening and wargaming? Is this big, small, non-existent? Peter, you might have a garden. There's certainly something wild and expansive growing from the top of your head. How close are gardening and wargaming in your world?
Absolutely. We've even got a table set up there. We've got a overhead cover, special lighting. We've even got mood music to play the wargaming.
Yeah, I don't want to know. I'm not sure I want to know about the mood music at the bottom of your
1812
your luxury.
overture for Napoleonics.
Oh, sorry. You said mood music. I thought you said nude music, which was even more disturbing.
Don't hit me with your projections, okay? I know you've got these good visualizations, but please, Simon,
Yeah, a nude badger running around in the backyard is just
living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. Yes, yeah, we're badger hair. No, right. Andy Finkel, what about you? Gardening, wargaming? Is the crossover?
I've never been a fan of gardening, so definitely wargaming for me.
Definitely wargaming. Simon, you're a man. You're a garden-free man.
Yeah, so I have no garden. So bring back my pub. I want to play back in the pub.
Saunders, what about you? Do you think getting the old Alan Titchmarsh vibe when you're doing some gaming?
No garden. I've got a sort of communal garden which has been used a little bit recently, but that's another story. I'm just more disturbed by the idea of Mr. Webb having a full orchestra playing the 1812 overture in his garden.
Well, you
have the artillery firing the guns in the relevant parts as well. I mean, yeah.
Well, oh, absolutely. You've got to get the. You can do it with small mortars actually, and it still represent the sounds. It's the neighbours a little bit, but they'll be fine.
I imagine after last
Sounds
week.
like that bloke in Mary Poppins with his cannons.
I imagine after last week now, you play your children down the bottom of the garden and then make them trudge back in the snow from the end of the garden if they lose. And you started off with 8 children, and now you only have 2.
And he makes them eat dead horses.
Yes.
No, the forfeit is that you have to go get me some more wine.
Oh, right, okay. And Tamsin, is there any kind of gardening stories? Have you painted up any gardening implements for your Judge Dredd's, internal garden or anything?
No. Last year I did paint up a few bits of sort of garden terrain accessories for World War II games, but
garden terrain accessories.
Yeah, greenhouses, sheds, things like that.
We all need a good shed in our war game. Yeah. Adam, I believe you do have a garden. Is there a big crossover, or is it just like, no, I'd rather be wargaming?
Well, the crossover, it's weird because I do have a very nice garden actually, and gardening's my wife's hobby, and wargaming's my hobby. But the weird thing is, my wife keeps complaining I don't help her doing the gardening. She wants me out there as well, which would me be saying, but you've never painted any Spanish feudal knights for me. So there's no crossover because I refuse.
I think it should be some quid pro quo. I think she should actually paint up some elephants for you.
Possibly. Well, I think that was the final question, but I think Andy actually answered it last time. What size brush do you paint an elephant with? And the answer is all together now, a big brush.
Big brush.
Big brush. Yeah. Echo. Thank you. That's all good. Right.
Fun.
A big brush.
A big brush. Yes, indeed.
That's a bristle brush.
Massive brush.
A badger bristle brush.
Badger bristles.
No, that's for knights.
Badger Patriot airbrush.
Yes, Badger Patriot. So, look, I think we've done those questions to death, really, haven't we?
This means war.
So that really brings us on to the question of what are we painting at the moment. I think, Andy, you're sat there with your headphones on, you're in the kitchen, you're painting away. Remind us, what are you painting as we speak?
Thracian peltas with rhomboids. Very nice they are.
Okay, very jolly. And these are the ones you found down the back of the sofa?
No, these are the ones I ordered, having overlooked the ones I found down the back of the sofa.
So is this going to become a full Thracian army now then? Do you enjoy
Probably
them
not,
that much?
but I'm going to end up with 4 units of Thracian peltas, which is probably too many. So I suppose I might end up with a Thracian allied contingent somewhere along the line, but not immediately.
Okay, all right, solid. And any kind of takeaways from your Thracian paintings?
Yes, in hindsight, I would have painted the shield bosses before the full amount of the shields, because then I wouldn't have had to go over them again.
Right. Okay, that's the learning. Adam, what about you? And I do have a bone to pick with you on the old painting front as well at some point. So I'll raise that when it's my turn. But
okay, we'll do bone picking later. I'm still getting on with my Romans. and I've put the shield transfers onto the auxiliary and finished them off, and very pretty they look too, so I'm quite pleased. But I'm also after some painting advice or some buying advice, because the next army I'm going to do, I've decided to try to do paired army, so I'm going to do an enemy of the early Imperial Romans, and I've decided to do Dacians. Mainly on the basis of Victrix have just released their new Dacian figures, and they're very nice and quite cheap, and I can do a whole army in 28mm for not too much. But the question is this, because I'm going to do a summation ally, firstly because it adds a bit of oomph, and secondly because they look good. Now, first question is, I'm going to get the summations with a horse armour, because that just looks cooler. And I've been told, or in my massive research of 10 minutes reading, I know that the horse armour can either be bronze or iron or horn. Now, first question is, how do you paint horn? Horn armour.
Horn armour was often painted or lacquered.
Yeah.
Okay. What colour?
Anything you want, I guess.
Any colour you want, really. I'd avoid purples.
Okay.
So any colour that would have been commonly, where they'd have had pigments commonly available. So reds, blues, greens, yellows.
Okay, so quite dull, a range of quite dullish colours then.
I seem to remember years ago that Sarmatian horse armour was a greenish colour.
Okay. Next question is this. When it's sort of like either horn or bronze or iron, does that mean they're not sure and everyone had the same in a sort of like a tribe or whatever? Or in a tribe, might he have iron, might he have bronze, so it would be all mixed up?
It would have been mixed.
Okay, so I can do it quite
to some extent. It would have been what was available. Also,
Posh bloke gets bronze.
Also, how wealthy the individual was.
Okay, so that's good, because it makes it sort of like different colours, so it makes it more interesting. My final question is this. What's your attitude to morphing cataphracts? Because although in the game they count as heavy cavalry, they're basically sort of like fully armoured on fully armoured horses. So, because I was thinking that could be maybe the start of Parthians as well, if I get some actual Parthian figures. So, when does a cataphract stop? Like a late Roman cataphract, is that too different to a early Sassanid or early Parthian, or what do you reckon?
I think it's the headgear mainly.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be a bit. Sorry, Tim.
No, go on. Sorry.
I was just thinking, your opponent would have to be a bit of a grognard to really complain that your Parthian cataphract had the wrong head to be used as a Roman cataphract or a Greek cataphract or whoever it was.
This thing, it's not so much I'm worried about what my opponent will say. Doing 28mm, my painting isn't going to be good, but on even taking that into account, I want what I'm doing to look roughly like it should look, if you see what I mean. So I'm not too worried about that, but it's more
I think because I've just had an idea. I've got some. Well, okay, fire away, Andy. Yeah.
Which is, why don't you do some alternative heads from different eras? Don't glue them on, and use blue tack, and just keep changing the heads depending on what army it's in.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Even as wargamers, we're looking around going, "Oh, I'm not sure." That's like an over-engineered solution. But even
Adam, look. At the end of the day, they're all just going to get squashed by elephants anyway. So
that could be it. No, I think there's actually a slightly different solution. Actually, I think
more heavy knights.
If your Sassanid cataphracts are bubble heads, they won't fit. They won't be right.
Come on, Tim.
I'm in. No, I think if you're doing summations, you buy the Gothic heavy cavalry pack from Gripping Beast, which have got cataphract horses like that one, and have Gothic cavalry riders who are animated with spears and all the rest of it, who are like charging and attacking, and that's much better for the Sarmatian cavalry.
Because the later type dash.
The Sarmatian cavalry, it was two-handed lances.
I mean, this would make sense because the later Dacians do actually get Ostrogothic allies.
Yeah.
But I want the Sarmatians with a two-handed
do the cataphracts from the Gripping Beast cataphracts have a two-handed pose? Or are they just sort of holding it, I think? Because gripping beast
Very
riders
close.
tend to be a bit similar.
Somebody does 28mm plastic.
The Roman
Do they?
ones, Roman cataphract ones, they have the.
I'm sure I've seen them.
Maybe it is then.
Plastic 28mm, because I've been looking at, I think it was Warlord, which are like £3 a figure, which...
No, you look at the gripping beast. Gripping beasts do a plastic cataphract and a plastic Gothic heavy cavalry. And the Gothic heavy cavalry, they're both on the same half fully barded horse. And then I believe Fireforge have just brought out some new cataphracts, or about to bring out some new ones. But there are definitely two sets of gripping.
Yeah, they're the ones I've seen, the Fireforge ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
but you might find that the despite the they're only one-handed poses, some of those Gothic cavalry are much more animated, and they might make much better Sarmatians.
So looking on the Gripping Beast site right now, you've got the Roman cataphract, which looks quite imposing. So it's the cavalry, the full dragon skin armor, guy armored with carrying a big stick and all that.
Because I want them to look like wild Sarmatians rather than Romans. So he looks like organised.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think you want to look at their plastic Goth cavalry, the new plastic Goth cavalry.
The Goth Elite Heavy Cavalry.
Elite Heavy Cavalry, that'll be the one.
There you go. Yeah, so here's the other one you can get. That's what you want. Look at that. Can you see that?
That's summation, isn't
They
it?
do look a bit kind of cataphracty, don't they?
Yeah, but I think if you drop them on the table, they could either be Elite Heavy Cavalry, cataphracts, or whatever, because it's guy on a big horse, a lot of armor, and a big sword. That's going to be elite to me. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
I'll have to see whether I can take the not having the two-handed lance.
Yeah, that's.
Have you seen the Fireforge? You mentioned the Fireforge ones as well. They're the new ones as well, aren't they?
Yeah, are they actually out yet? I'm not entirely sure. I think they're also Fireforge's horses are broader, but I guess you're only fitting 3 on a base here anyway, aren't you? Really, quite soon. But yeah, I personally, I've got 2 packs of those Gothic ones, which I'm going to convert to my Elite Arab Cavalry, which are
and
kind of
they are nice as well. Yeah, because I've got the Arabic stuff. I do like the they go together now. Yeah,
they fit together quite well. Okay, all right. So is yours kind of been a week of planning a painting project then, Adam, rather than actually doing any paint on the figures?
Yeah, I've just finished off the Exilia, and I've been mulling over the Dacians, and Dacians have got to be a goer because you get the Falksman, you know what I mean? Any sort of like nation. I mean, on the table they'll probably be rubbish because they're all basically medium infantry. But any nation that can intimidate the Romans by having huge choppers.
It was one of my kind of first 15mm armies back in the day. I think I actually painted it when I first moved down to London. So I think I had a 15mm Roman, and then it was get the generic barbarian army with all sorts of odds and sods, and then Dacians as well, Dacians, and I think I must have had some Donington 15mm infantry that added to a Mike's Models 15mm army. I think I must have bought a ready-made army from Mike's Models and then bought some more Phalanxmen from Donington, which when they were all based up, it looked like a load of blokes had brought some of their children with them. The difference in height was just absolutely astonishing. They were barely
Mike's Models always looked like dwarven armies, really, didn't they?
They really did. Stood next to these guys from Donington who were like hulking great brutes with whatever. It was just the oddest kind of look at all. But it used to amuse me back in the day when that was there. So Saunders, what have you been painting this week?
Frankish Lightfoot, and continuing with the war bands to finish all war bands.
Right. So how many bases are you up to now?
I've done 16 bases of war band.
Wow.
4 Lightfoot's javelin, 4 Lightfoot bow. It's going to be basically 2 armies by the time it's finished.
Now, are the warband kind of distinguishable into elites and armoured and all sorts, or are they just a blosh of...
No, because with a Frankish army, it's either all elites or all ordinary.
Oh, super simple then.
Yeah, it's basically the most you can ever need is 12 elites and 16 to 18. Mind you, I've done a list with about 32 bases in it.
Wow, that's pretty substantial. And did you stick with the Breton rugby jersey look, or do you lose the will to live?
There's a fair number. They haven't all got Breton jumpers, but there's quite a few Breton jumpers mixed in amongst them.
Dave, when I was painting,
starting to get better, I have to admit.
Yeah. If you ever bored thinking what colour shall I paint things, and I've used this for certain armies, is think of football teams and paint their colours. So when I was doing the condottieri last year for the London GTE, and I was using different units of knights, and they had different coloured flags and plumes and stuff, I did each unit in a different colour based on an Italian football club's colour. So you could do the same for your Franks.
Nah.
No. Yeah, but the French.
None.
Yeah, no, I think
It's
the French Premier
Phil-
League or whatever it is, they've become a bit over commercialised, and their
Otherwise,
shirts are a bit more.
you'd have to start to have sponsors on their stripy jumpers.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Yeah, PSG. You have to have like a Neymar figure rolling around on the ground on every base or something for that one. All right, Peter. What about you? What epic purchase have you been ploughing through this week?
I got a bit delayed due to work and things, so I'm still stuck on my Spanish Knights, and I'm trying the thing of undercoating black with one set and white with another, just to see the color contrast, just see how they stand out. But I did actually go and buy a load of stuff from war bases, some actual 15mm buildings and such, like Roman temples and such like.
Oh, right. Is that a new range? Because I don't remember seeing those before.
Yeah, the MDF.
They've had it for about a year or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've got loads of stuff. So I've got a couple of sort of more generic ones which could go for any period, but I like the Roman temple one. But they've got a couple that are sort of like Mediterranean type ones, so I can deploy them anywhere. Because I've got a couple of 15mm desert type stuff, which does for the ancient stuff. Now I've got some stuff that could probably do most of Europe, maybe not the Roman temple, but some of the more generic sort of Mediterranean type look stuff you could still have now, certainly for Napoleonics and everything else.
Do they do a fire temple then? Because that's the go-to baggage piece, a Sasanian fire temple.
I thought Damien did.
They do in kind of resin or something, or is that MDF?
Yeah. Don't know. I know they've got the pieces and that for it.
Right.
But war bases, I just was ordering some stuff because my wife likes putting together the 28mm stuff. So we've got a whole street of stuff now. So I thought I'd get some 15mm.
So there's an accidental click into a different part of the website then.
Yes,
possibly.
Very accidental.
Very accidental.
So Peter, when you were on the war bases site, did you not buy a badger?
You showed me that afterwards. I was denied. I didn't know they did miniatures. I just know they do MDF stuff. So, I saw the badger and I was like, oh, man, got to have something for next time.
Yeah, only £1.50.
It definitely should have been a badger.
But they're ordering.
Okay. Tamsin, what about you? There's more. No, he's off again. This is going to be a long podcast, folks, isn't it? Off you go, Peter. Keep going.
I've seen Steve's painting online. What was his name? Steve
Dean.
Steve Dean.
After seeing his orcs, I quite fancied the idea of having an orc ADLG army.
So does that mean you bought that already? Or
not quite. I'm sorting out the list and which list I'd do it for.
I've been working on playing ADLG with fantasy using Warmaster 10mm armies, and I've made a bit of progress in how it ought to work.
Okay, did one of the guys at the club have a go at adapting that as well? Was that Richard?
Been working on it, yeah.
So
Richard's been working on fantasy rules. I don't know which.
Rooks, someone I know in Australia did an orc army as sort of Roman legionaries.
That's good going.
Of course, it would have been Australian.
Pop quiz question for you.
He's a naval officer.
Who can remember in WRG 6 how they defined a dragon for their fantasy sort of like crossover?
Oh, was it a flying elephant with a fire siphon or something? Was it?
That was it. And
that was it.
A superior elephant with a fire siphon that could fly.
I like that of that.
That sounds pretty accurate to me.
The only elephanty thing I've got in my Empire and Elf armies is a steam tank, which I reckon is an elephant with artillery, but protection rating of 2.
Yep, I could buy one of those. That would be Peter would definitely buy a whole fleet of them, I imagine, if he was allowed to.
Line it up, carry on.
That would be it. All right. So, Peter, are you finished now, or can I ask someone else, or have you got anything else to chip in?
Go on. I'm sure I'll think of something.
All right, okay. I'll just put you on mute then whilst we ask Tamsin what you've been painting this week.
Don't mention knights or badgers.
No.
I won't. So last week, when we were recording last week, I was just painting up some MDF tokens for Chain of Command, jump off points and patrol markers. Finished those, and then took a look up at my to be read shelf on the bookcase and realised that I had quite a backlog. So I spent a few days reading, and then on Saturday realised, I better paint something up for this week.
Right. Yes, that's the problem, isn't it? You just get under pressure to do something.
So the figures I was talking about last week, painted them up. Hopefully you can see them.
Oh, very neat.
These are, oh wow, criminals on
Very-
motorbikes.
Very nice.
Teddy bears,
I like the teddy bears.
biker, and grav surfers.
Wow.
Look at them.
No one works of art.
Oh, that's fantastic. A drunk man lying on the ground.
Yeah, so these were mixed. Like teddy bears and the drunk were from TT Combat. I think it was their backstreet accessories range.
I like how your motorcycle has a. Is it a monkey with a gun?
It's a chimp with a gun. Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah, chimp with a gun. That's got to be a win.
Had fun painting these up. The biker and chimp and the grav surfers, which are coming up in a second, were from a small company called War Games Terrain Workshop.
Okay.
You can just imagine, in the movie, the policeman calling it in. So, Sergeant, you're not going to believe this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is for 2000 AD, so
they've probably got a category for it, isn't it? Oh yeah, it's a 602 chimp on bike. Yeah.
Now, in fairness, quite a few of us.
Not unknown. I think it was a very, very early episode. You actually had an uplifted ape sort of mafioso boss.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
Don Uglio.
Don Uglio.
Yeah, he was really funny.
I was just thinking, quite a few of us we either work or live in central London or nearby. So seeing a chimp on a motorbike wouldn't be the weirdest thing that we've seen at 2 a.m. leaving a pub in Soho.
I think that might have been me and you, Adam, mightn't it? That might be the weirdest thing people have seen, but leaving pubs. Although, no, then again, we did stop that after we didn't get allowed into, what was that nightclub in Camden? That was me, you and Steve, wasn't it? When one time, Coco, we were kind of queuing up to go in. I think it was like indie night on a Saturday night, and they just wouldn't let us in. And
we're just too old, mate.
Exactly, that was it. We couldn't work it out, so we weren't drunk, and we were dressed the same as everybody else. They just weren't letting us in, and then we came to the conclusion we were just too old. They didn't want us in.
I still don't think that's as good as when we refused exit from a nightclub in Italy.
Yeah, true. When they wouldn't let us out, that was a problem.
Yeah.
That was a real big problem. And we had no idea why. It was like an underground toilet as well, wasn't it? There was a lot of very, very delicate.
With breakdancing, lots of breakdancing going on.
Breakdancing as well, and it wasn't the time when breakdancing was popular in the rest of the world. Maybe that's a whole new podcast series. Weird overseas wargaming trips that we can do. Maybe that comes up next after this, reminiscing. But it's okay. So Simon, what?
I've also had a lot of lead arrive this week.
So
my infamy project. So lots.
Something for next week then.
Right, early Imperial Roman and early German forces for that. So.
All right.
I think War Bases do some markers for infamy. I saw on their website. I don't know what markers you need.
They're doing various movement trays and so on.
Yeah, I don't know what you need for it, or whether it's just.
Because I'm doing it in 15mm. I'm probably going to multi-base. I'm still trying to decide. At this point, I haven't decided whether to do it on 40mm bases, frontage bases, so I can use them for ADLG. Although I've done a quick trial and they look a bit cramped, so I might go with 50mm frontage.
Okay, all right. Well, Simon, what about you? What's been you were doing tanks last time, I think I heard.
Yeah, so I've now finished up the modern British, so all the APCs and other random vehicles have now all been painted up, so they're mostly based. Actually ran out of MDF, which is quite scary as a wargamer, so it's been quite good. I've also finished off basing up the salvo units for ADLG-R.
Oh, nice, with the little tiny guns on as well, integral on an 80mm wide base. That's nice.
Yeah,
that really
so
rocks.
trying to cram in as many troops as possible, so they've come out quite effectively. I've got finished basing up Prince Rupert and the dog.
And his dog.
Boy, I think
yes.
was it called Boy, his poodle?
Yes.
Woof woof. And then for something completely serious, because as a historical wargamer, you've got to really look at what things would be as a serious player. So Bad Squiddo Games, who I'm a big fan of, she makes these great ranges of random miniatures, and at one of the store shows, she had her stock some of her stuff. So I've got 25mm bunny rabbits.
Oh, urban bunny rabbits, yes, liking it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And as many wargamers have seen me walk around at competitions, I often carry a bag of carrots as a random chew toy. So one of them is carrying a carrot.
That's good. Are you going to sneak them onto some of the 25mm bases, or are they just a thing?
I am thinking of putting them onto some of the general bases. I was also thinking of making them into a ZOC marker or a
casualty markers or something.
Casualty markers or something like that. Ambush markers as well.
Yes,
and I've also got the Bad Squiddo also does 25mm cats, so I've got a bunch of their models as well. So for going something completely serious. So
you're going full menagerie then.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not going for the.
Didn't go for the gun bunnies then.
No, but I might be tempted later on to buy gun bunnies because they just sound really cool.
So Saunders, you're waving.
Well,
Saunders, you're waving something very weird at the camera there. It looks like
people's. Simon took me past their stall somewhere. I remember. And
this
I ended up buying some
scarecrows. Studio miniatures.
Scarecrow, and they're actually sort of like on 40x40s, ambush markers or something.
What? Your scarecrow army? Yeah, that's weird.
Ian Marsh used to do. I'm not sure if he still does. This is Fighting 15s. A range of fighting teddy bears. Some of them cavalry ones are on rocking horses.
Yes.
Yeah,
very rare.
Got sold off to somebody. So
I sold it off to Mike.
By somebody, and for his own benefit, and he's not selling them.
Oh, right. So somebody bought the range to take it out of circulation. That's fantastic. Yes, there's ranges that maybe that should be done till, but I'm not set. Right.
I did want to buy the model. Tim, when you and Adam were playing Malifaux, and there's that model of the young girl walking around with the teddy bear and the large carving knife. So I thought that would be quite appropriate as well.
The Dreamer, I think. The Dreamer.
Yeah, it just says everything, doesn't it? Just cute little girl going, la, 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 carving knife in the bunny.
Yeah, carving knife behind her back. That's a fab model.
Hassle-free got figures like that?
Probably.
Hassle-free, I think it is.
Hassle-free, yes. They'll have things like that as well, yeah.
And you use the formations?
Yeah, possibly. Well, this week I've actually started myself. I painted a garden gate. Again, another kind of Andy's question, a large brush with that one that took quite a few coats. It was with I don't use much Cuprinol for the rest of my wargaming, but there was a Cuprinol white paint that took me about 4 coats to realise it's kind of sort of a white wood stain. It's not a cut paint that covers properly, but so you can still see the grain of the wood, and that's what it's supposed to be. But it won't be the first time I've opened the tin and just started going without reading the instructions. But that's worked out quite well. Quite pleased with how that's finished. And then I've been finishing up making and doing the like 60 odd bases of 28mm plastic, 60 odd figures of 28mm plastic cavalry, which is a mix of the gripping beast. Some of those Sarmatian, I think they're Sarmatian cataphracts and they're Arabs. But Adam, I also had a packet of the Fireforge Mongol Cavalry, which I think over the last few weeks, you've said you painted up almost 2 boxes of it. Now, my question for you is, how did you manage to paint those up, come on this podcast, describe them, without fixating on kind of the sort of the butt plug component of the horse's tails, which when you're trying to put them together was just like deeply weird, because the gripping beast ones, they're in 2 halves and you glue them. But the tail is
right. Now, yeah.
but the tail is part of one of the halves of the horses, and that's fine. But the Fireforged ones have just got like massive butt cheeks with a hole in them, and then like you plug the tail into them, and then it's got kind of a sort of a ball socket arrangement on the end, and it's just like there's something deeply disturbing about this, about even what the design choice was or something.
I will answer your question on that one, Tim, because it did strike me as a bit odd.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think where you fixated on it and you found it deeply disturbing says more about you than it does about the design choice of the figure.
I think you're absolutely probably right. I think you did very well to keep that as something of a secret in your own home and just think about it in private. But I've just aired that now in public, but it was just a very, very strange thing. But at least it does give us one of the obvious questions for next week that we can possibly not answer in a different. Maybe that's a question we pose and none of us are prepared to answer.
Let's not do a question about butt plugs. That wouldn't be good.
Do a question about butt plugs.
It's a bit like painting Gallic Guy Sartre. That can be a bit disturbing.
Yes, that can be a bit. Yeah, whether they dress to the left or
moving
the right.
along.
Moving along.
What are you using the Mongols for?
I'm mixing them in with the Arabs because the bodies are all the same to all intents and purposes. And the gripping beast Arabs have lots of different heads, so I wanted to get just more variety than just the gripping beast because they can be sometimes a little bit samey. And then I did also crack and buy some Perry figures. I know we talked about it, the cost of all the different figures last week, and I ended up buying a load of the Perry metals, which are out for delivery now. I think I got the email through from them either this morning or yesterday saying, bang, they're in the post now, to really make sure that I've got just far too many Arabs, which rather than just having maybe just about enough was the answer. But, a load more Perry figures, which are grand. They do some Arab infantry without hats or turbans that have kind of got long hairish stuff. So I think they look quite good as Daylamite. For some reason in my mind, they just look like Daylamite guys. But so they're on their way, but I wanted to kind of do, after doing those Hungarians in 15 mil, I've realised doing all the horses first is actually a good thing because I don't like painting horses, and by just limiting myself to painting horses, it makes it a project, and I can try and make it better. Whereas if I've got them and the riders, I just gravitate to riders, and the horses an irritation. So having the discipline to not start doing the riders, not even assemble them until the horses are done, just puts 100% focus on the horses, really. So that's something surprising and learning. And I think that's the other surprising thing is we've managed to get through at least 2 people talking without Peter interrupting and talking about badges. So something's really going amiss. But on that note, it's probably time to move on to the next section.
Before we do, can I ask one question? I'm doing. I'm going to be assembling a load of 25 mil plastic stuff for my medieval army. What colour would you recommend it being underpainted if it's a medieval army?
Black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Silver. Nice brush with gunmetal and then highlight a little bit of silver.
Okay, thank you.
That's done most of it for sure. Okay, then we will attempt to finish this section yet again, and on to the next one.
This means war.
So having talked about what we painted, let's talk about what we played. And I think a few of us have had some quite intense games and a mix of games. So Andy, you've done another couple of online games, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. I played Giorgio as a new member of the club last Tuesday, and he wanted to. I told him I'm using Ordnance French, so he said, "Well, I'll try Albanian," and I wasn't quite sure why, and I mullered them basically.
Right. Okay. Did you find out why he wanted to use Albanian?
Well, he's used them in other rule sets, and he quite likes the army, but.
Okay.
It was basically bringing the penknife to a gunfight essentially.
And what did you use, Andy?
Oh, I used Ordnance French Knights, heavy knight when flattening them.
Full set. Then was this on Tabletop Simulator or in real world?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Then that was on Tuesday night. Then on Wednesday, I played my regular opponent, Dave Ray, and we did a refight of the Nicephorians against the Normans with Arab allies, and had a waterway on one side. He lined up his Varangians against the waterway. I lined up my knights opposite them, released a handbrake, and the knights went straight through them. Full badger.
Okay, full badger. Did the whole set.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful sight.
Ran them all over.
It feels good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, and then Mr. Saunders, I think you're the other one who's been doing extensive gaming this week, but you've come hot-footing it. I think it's been a bit sweaty today, so probably literally hot-footing it back from the club. Where did you play 2 games today?
I played Sean at 1 o'clock, and then I played Gordon at 4 o'clock. So ADLG, where we'd normally have 9 tables in the back room of the pub, we had 3 this time, but I think we can get away with 5. We're just going in. We've got our own entrance through the garden. Ravi's done a damn good job of perspexing up the main part of the pub. I think he's grateful that we're back.
Yeah, good.
It's pretty secure. We weren't all wearing masks sat at the table, which is a bit naughty, but I think, we know who we are and that. It's looking good, and I think we're going to be fine. And it was a pleasure to have toys on table, actually, although I got stuffed in both games.
Oh, right, okay.
Which army did you use?
The Turks with the artillery and the things like that, and they didn't work.
Right, that army didn't work. Okay. So,
well, I think I'll persist with it, because that's good. And I played Dave Ray in Wisconsin as well. He's a thoroughly nice guy, and he doesn't get much time to travel or anything like that. So, and I think I'm playing him again this week. He'd like a rematch. I completely destroyed him. I used a medieval Spanish army, and I went through centre, left, and right.
Oh, okay. So what? You overran his Varangians again, or?
No. He was using Ordnance French, and he had a. No, he used medieval. We both had medieval.
He was using the Portuguese or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, he used
the Aragonese.
With an English ally, so he had longbowmen. But I hit the longbow with javelin and Almugavars. I hit his centre knights were 4 to my 6, 7 knights, and it was a similar sort of thing. It was composition. Yeah.
So with the rematch on Friday. Does that mean your Ottomans, you guys are going to do the ally then?
Oh, no. I mean, I was thinking of taking the Serbians in this afternoon. No, they worked all right. I was within 3 points of breaking Gordon's Wallachian Vlad the Impaler army. Could have easily gone my way. And but he ignored the artillery, but that was all right. That was the purpose of it. And Sean was really close. But Sean was using Ordnance French with lots of knights. But I was close to breaking him. It's all right. I like it. It's good.
Yeah, I think with those new armies, when you start putting them on table and they don't quite work, but you can sort of feel that there's something there that you just need to kind of tweak it a bit. How many Janissaries did you use? Did you use the full 4? 3?
No, 3.
Yeah, 3 is the magic number.
Yeah, I think the second game I should have put more terrain down.
3 is the magic number because they disappear.
Yeah.
The thing with the Ottomans is just a very expensive army. There's not much filler there, really.
Okay. All right. And you got more games planned down the club over the next couple of weeks then?
2 more on Monday next week.
2 more on Monday. Get down there, do it intense, do the full set.
I'm going to have some time on my hands for the next few months, so I'm going to be filling it with the club. I'll probably carry on doing TTS. I mean, we've got to see which way the virus goes, but at the moment I'm going to be managing 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 hours of gaming a week.
That's pretty solid, isn't it?
Painting.
Are you and I playing tomorrow night, Dave? I can't remember. What did we say?
I can give you a game tomorrow night. That sounds good.
Okay, we'll sort it out later.
That sounds like a plan.
Now you're playing back down at the club. It reminds me of telling you what Central London on tour when you go to competitions should be called and what you should have on the T-shirts. And your team name and what you should have on your T-shirts is the Wankers Out Back.
Oh yeah.
This is because years ago when I was in the club, I went out to the bar to get a drink. And do you remember the old landlord? The one that was a bit of a geezer? he had a phone call, and it was for someone called Dave, and he was shouting in a bar, "It's Dave, phone call for Dave," and no one answered. And do you know the regulars used to sit on the corner at the bar?
Yeah.
One of them just went, Dave, he must be one of the wankers out back, meaning the wargamers, which is like sort of summed it up really. And it's odd because in a way it's like all the regulars there at that time were basically minor characters in a Guy Ritchie movie. So it's
a geriatric Guy Ritchie movie.
Not a lot of change.
Yeah. It's just how they spoke. And I'm not even sure he was being sort of like insulting. I think that was like a term of endearment.
No.
You know what I mean? You're one of the wankers out back, you are. Love you. Come here. Give you a
They're
cuddle.
bigger wankers.
I didn't
so
those guys are all postmen. All those
Sorry?
fat guys who sit at the bar are postmen, and they've all disappeared. Maybe they're all dead.
Does happen to all of us, but Simon, I guess you could have your own T-shirt and just do the letter spacing slightly differently. You know, the wanker outback or something. That could be you.
With a couple of corks on it, or upside down.
Yeah, the wanker outback.
Because that would really throw people. Hey, look, I can read it properly. Oh, that's
actually,
for no other reasons.
Maybe we could launch a whole competition series in Australia and call it the Wanker Outback or something like that as well. That'd be another good one. But I think on that note, it's definitely time to move on.
This means war. This means war.
So
I gave squash today, if that counts.
okay. I'm going to grab another beer just a sec.
We didn't discuss my beer.
Hey.
What is it?
Different. I've got Arbor Massive Azak. It's a New Zealand pale ale brewed with Azaka, Citra, and Eldorado hops.
Ooh.
That's
Was that an
probably
Aldi
illegal.
special?
Fucking expensive. Nice though. It's a full pint. 5.4%.
That sounds quite substantial. No, I'm just on brewed on pale. Actually, I've moved away from online ordering now that Majestic is open, and I'm just supporting. I would say a local business, but I guess it's the local branch of a national business. But this idea of going into shops and just pointing at things and buying them, a bit like wargaming face to face, it could well take on, couldn't it? It could be quite something.
Novel, isn't it?
It's
Or
normal.
going into shops, picking
Could
things
take
up off the shelf, taking them to
I'm quite happy to avoid shopping.
cashiers and paying for.
So where should I order some more paints from? Because I'm almost running out.
I've
What
got
paints
Which
do you use?
paint?
Local friendly gaming store.
What brand do you use?
Vallejo, them.
Either Pendragon Mini Bits or there's a company called SNM Stuff.
I've been
Tamsin.
using,
Yeah, Tamsin, we need
You
to talk about
spend
your
too much-
website.
You spend
Sorry,
too much time.
can I pause and you say that again?
Element Games. Element
Tamsin,
Games
what-
in Manchester. They're quite good.
Tamsin, what was the name of that paint company?
SNM Stuff.
S&M.
Yeah.
Oh, SNM, right.
Yeah, got to be
SN.
careful with your Googling on that one, haven't you, really, for sure. That could go horribly wrong. You might get something you didn't order through the post.
You might find they're flogging them.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yes, with
Andy,
those...
I've just got to say, fuck off, mate. Just stop it.
You wouldn't be the first.
No, that wouldn't be it. Look, with that groan, I think that's time for the dismal French Napoleonic music as we hit into yet another episode of teaching Timmy about Napoleon. Oh, there we go. Yes, the Napoleonic Wars. A time of pomp, ceremony, and a tragic retreat from Moscow. So last week's was kind of a bit miserable, as I said. You know, that didn't end well for the little bloke. And but I think he got back from this thing. He's sort of the only person. He was telling everybody, yeah, the rest of the army's on its way. He's hoping nobody reads Russian newspapers. And then, and presumably, then I'm trying to remember, was he starting to just conjure up a new army and go and invade Austria? or what happened after he gets back from that and the Austro-Hungarian Empire shuts the door on him or something?
Well, no, forget the Austrians for the moment. They buggered off home and were sort of minding their own business to see how things were going to work out. But Prussia basically pops up and says, right, we're going to go for independence. And the Russians had some troops marching to their support. And so Napoleon had only a small number of troops in Germany, and he had to raise whole new armies in France. And they were basically conscripts, young guys, cripples, all that kind of stuff, not very well trained, not a lot of stamina, and they were critically short of horses to pull artillery and for cavalry units. So his army in 1813, he managed to scrape together about 200,000 troops, but a lot of them were
scraped together,
raw.
of course. That's a bit of a scraping, isn't it? If you just reach out, that's all you can reach within easy reach, isn't it? 200,000. Just knock that together. Yeah.
I think it was a bunch of orcs. Lots of them, but they're not very good.
Right. Okay. So he's retreated from Moscow. He's accidentally lost like 500,000 men or something ludicrous, and then Prussia, which is part of Germany and Estonia, I think, wants to declare independence from Russia.
No, from France.
From France.
From their treaty obligations with France and having to do what the French say.
Okay, so he's off to suppress a revolution in Prussia with some old people.
Yeah, a lot of kids. Yeah.
This whole glamour of the Napoleonic Wars is not really resuscitating at this point in time, is it? Are there like figure manufacturers who do really oddly scaled and sized figures that are just shambolically dressed?
You just buy from a mix of manufacturers.
Yeah.
Well,
they're all wearing great coats, and they're not very smart uniforms.
Yeah,
okay.
That's why you get the old guard.
Right. So there's all sorts of mess then going around in Prussia, and let me guess, he does something really, really clever involving artillery and surprises everybody, and then the Russians are not very dynamic to help him.
Not really.
Well, he does manage to
batter. At that point was suffering, and the infantry as well, because the quality of their gunpowder.
We had the gunpowder discussion last week, didn't we?
He didn't have access to high-grade saltpeter, so their gunpowder became noticeably worse. So
he couldn't do the clever thing with the guns, and he's off to Prussia to stop them becoming independent. And what is there like about? What happens? How does that all work then?
Well, there's a couple of big battles, and by about June, Napoleon has driven them back, and he has a chance to really crush them at a battle called Bautzen. But Marshal Ney misses the plot, fails to turn up on the flank of the enemy, and so it ends up in an armistice.
Sorry, Andy, on it. Was that to do with there being no horses, that there was problems for Marshal Ney?
Partly, yes.
Yay.
See, he's back in the room.
I refer you to the comment I gave Andy a few moments ago.
I think you may be right there. Yes, definitely. Yep.
So he's beaten the enemy, but not hard enough to make them really surrender. And both sides agreed to an armistice for 6 weeks. And then they gather their strength. And during the armistice, the Austrians decide, we'll have another go.
I knew they'd come back. So is Prussia near Austria? I suppose, is it? Probably.
Yeah, so they're kind of neighbours. Yeah.
They're neighbours. Yeah. So the Austrians go, I know.
Oh, they're not quite neighbours. They're not neighbours, really. You've got Saxony and a lot of other states in between.
Prussia's North Germany, Austria's South Germany. They're sort of close without.
Yeah, high speed rail links, things like that. It doesn't take that long. It's all good.
Yeah.
Federal motor autobahns as well. So the Austrians are going, brilliant. Here's a chance to possibly lose to Napoleon in a way in which he cannot immediately then invade Austria through Italy. That's a result. Let's give this yet another go. Are the British paying for this still? Or have they
kind of, yes. Yeah.
Right.
And there's actually a British rocket troop with the Prussian army.
British rocket troops?
Yeah, David Bowie was involved.
Right. No, that's Elton John, isn't it?
Yeah, Rocket Man.
Rocket troops? No.
They had this thing called Congreve rockets, which when they worked, they were brilliant, but most of the time they were highly unreliable. And sometimes they chased off their own cavalry using this stuff quite by accident.
Yeah, I always had like rockets were always mounted on camels and used in the Northwest frontier or something, but they were actually used in Europe as well.
Yeah, just a few of them. I did 2 rocket troops or something like that. There weren't very many of them.
They're in some of the sharp ones.
Okay, of course they are. Bastard rockets. So
Yeah, the
so there's
safest
a bit.
place to stand was right in front of it.
Speaking of sharp, we should remember that at the same time that this is going on, Wellington is also coming into southern, fighting Spain and the Pyrenees and threatening France.
Oh God, is that still going on? That went on.
That's still going on.
Yeah, well, actually, there were loads of series, weren't there? Really. So
Yeah.
they had to kind of stretch it out to keep Sean
Well,
Bean.
by
employed
1813, most of the decent French troops in Spain had been hauled off to the main theatre in Germany because Napoleon was so short of decent troops. So
Right.
the marshals in Spain had to do with fewer troops and not as many good ones.
Okay, so there's kind of a bit of a sideshow, which means Wellington is presumably winning because it's got easier for him. He's thinking about going into southern France to kind of, taking over all the rugby-playing regions of the world, because he's got sort of northern Spain. He wants the Perpignans and other places. And then Napoleon's just having a ceasefire because he's waiting for the Austrians. So the Austrians are about to appear in Prussia, and Wellington's about to appear in southern France. And
Wellington's still fighting.
Napoleon does a brilliant.
This is getting the chronology right. In the summer of 1813, you've got this armistice, and then Austria joins in, and Wellington at the same time is still fighting in Spain, but he gives the French a mighty thrashing in a battle called Vittoria.
Okay, have we been there?
And after that,
we have. Yeah,
the monument.
Okay.
Yeah. After that, the French managed to keep Marshal Soult manages to keep Wellington out of France, but only just for the rest of the year. Okay. So it's up in the Pyrenees. There's some battles and stuff going on, but the Soult manages to hold off the British in Spain for the rest of the year. So that's Spain dealt with for 1813. Meanwhile, in Germany, the Allies come up with this cunning plan called the Trachtenberg Plan. And the idea is all the armies will converge going westwards to cut off the French. But if Napoleon turns up, that army backs off and the other ones keep advancing. So the idea is you fight anybody you meet except Napoleon. And if Napoleon turns up, you shift backwards.
So, because from my limited knowledge of pre-late 20th century warfare, combining multiple columns of different armies across vast distances in a synchronized way is definitely one of the easiest things that you'd always go for and think, yeah, we'll do that. That's bound to work.
Yeah, they just zoom, they zoomed each other.
Yeah, but Zoom, Skype, everything.
Well, you're talking about not moving sort of side by side, but just advancing on different axes through Germany.
Tim, your sarcasm was very well placed, but where they were at was the Austrians were in Austria in the south, and the Prussians and the Russians were to the east and the north. So they didn't have a choice. That's where they were. Okay. So they came up with the plan of everybody advance and get together in the middle.
Yeah.
If Napoleon comes along and attacks you, run away, and the other armies keep advancing.
Okay. So it actually was simple. It was simple. It was a plan that, on theory, could have been overcomplicated, but it actually was simple enough to actually execute. That's a miracle. Yeah. God, they control. So they're trying. Some of them trying to avoid him. Presumably, he's going after the Austrians because that's a bit of a gimme, isn't it? Really.
To begin with, yes, he does beat them at a battle called Dresden, and there's a rather amusing incident after the Battle of Dresden. After Dresden, the Austrians are running away. One French corps, led by a general called Vandamme, goes after them, gets into a blocking position, but unfortunately the rest of the French army doesn't come with him, and so his corps is ultimately surrounded and captured, and he's taken to the Tsar of Russia. And Vandamme he's been thrown out the French army 3 times for misbehaving and looting and basically being a crook, which says quite a lot for the French army. Yeah. But he's taken to the Tsar, and the Tsar's brother says, right, we'll have your sword. And he says, no, you're not having it. You couldn't take it off the battlefield. You're not having it now. And then the Grand Duke says, you're such a scoundrel, we've heard of you. Is there any crime of which you're not capable? And he says, well, nobody can accuse me of trying to kill my father, which is what the Tsar was accused of. And with that, he was packed into a carriage and sent off to Siberia.
Yes. Yeah, so rude and stupid.
And completely fearless. Tremendous guy. Yeah.
Rude
I
and
think that-
stupid. He sounds like a good bloke to be out on a night with.
Yeah, I bet he would have got us into cocoa, wouldn't he? That would have been it. He would have talked us into it, yeah. Or possibly the barman might have packed him in a trunk and sent him off to Siberia or something like that. So, all right. So Napoleon's kind of wandering around Germany, and other people trying to avoid fighting him, and the rest of it. So, where's this? This something exciting must happen, or is it just?
Yeah. Well, eventually,
Leipzig happens.
yeah. Eventually, the French armies are driven back to Leipzig.
Right.
And there's a massive. It's called the Battle of the Nations, and there's about, I think, 600,000 allies and about 300,000 French and their allies. And the result is the French lose the battle.
Is this
They
one
blame it on the
Wargamers
Saxons.
battles? Is this Wargamers must-do battles then, Leipzig?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Is this a real table groaner? It's like stacks of stuff.
And then so. And they all get stuck in as well.
Wow. Okay. And is there any manoeuvring, or is it just like Wargamers line up and slog?
No, it's manoeuvring and people turn up late. And Bernadotte, he used to be a French marshal. Do you remember him?
Bernadette.
He turns up as the king of Sweden. He turns up as the king of Sweden.
Hey.
What is that? A fancy dress, or is it what, like 1930s Italy? Everybody gets to go for a while. How do you end up
No.
king of
He was
Sweden?
appointed. He was appointed the king of Sweden. Different story. Quite a long time. He is the ancestor of. Do you know the photograph you like using of the Princess of Sweden?
Yes, that great
Same
Swedish
royal
leader.
family.
it's
She
the
goes back
it's
to
the same
Bernadotte.
dynasty.
Yeah.
Same dynasty. Okay.
But he's in command of the army of the north of the Allies. But he kind of turns up late and drags his feet because he's like, "Oh, I don't want to get involved." It
Right.
sounds like a divide.
Now he's a king.
Yeah.
Until they threaten to shop them to the British and say, "Right, we'll stop your subsidy," and then he said, "All right, well, I'll carry on then."
Right. Okay. So there's this enormous Wargamers table groaner Battle of Leipzig, in which actually interesting things happen, not just lining up. Does Napoleon try to do anything sort of clever in this? Or,
Well, he actually kind of wins the first day, and then things go a bit. Numbers basically begin to tell against him, and the French decide to retreat. And in the middle of the retreat, this panicky engineer bloke blows up the bridge at the wrong moment, and lots of French guys are caught on the wrong side and captured. And so what would have been an orderly retreat turns into a bit of a shambles, and a lot of the French army get captured, the ones that weren't killed. And so it turns into a bit of a disaster for the French.
Okay, because when you started that story and you were saying, the first half went well and then the second half, I was going to kind of draw a parallel to the two-leg championship playoff semi-final between Fulham and Cardiff, which is ongoing at the moment, and Fulham are 1-0 up with 67 minutes gone, and make it about a two-leg game. But then that bit about a bridge being blown up and like a mass panic, huge amounts of casualties, enormous amounts of human suffering, really kind of stretches the story a bit, hopefully, beyond what the second leg is going to be when we're at home at Craven Cottage in a couple of days' time. So, yeah, that's not really a great foretaste, is it?
Yeah, if it had VAR, the bridge wouldn't have blown up. He wouldn't have been allowed to blow it.
Okay, he would have stopped. They would have turned back time. That's good then. Fine. So we'll pray for VAR. There's no VAR. So that Leipzig is a bit of a terrible thing for the old Frenchies.
Absolutely.
And then I presume if Napoleon loses a battle, what normally happens, he gets a phone call about 20 minutes from the end, rushes off to Paris, tells everybody it went really wonderful, and then hope that nobody reads any Prussian newspapers. Is that what happened this time, or did he just
Well,
go
not
beat the
quite.
Austrians?
He's still marching with the rest of his army back towards. He's trying to get back to France now.
Okay.
And the Bavarians, who were his allies, change sides and try and stop him. And he managed to stomp them on the way.
Okay.
And at the end of the year, Napoleon's back at the borders of France. Now, what I find interesting is he was then offered a deal by the allies who offered him a deal saying, France can keep its borders as long as you make peace and promise to stay out of Europe. He rejected that deal. So the allies kept going.
Oh, right. Okay. So he could have just done a kind of, in my hand, I have a piece of paper, Neville Chamberlain thing. And, but he was like, no, I want to carry on. And they're like, all right, we will keep going.
Basically.
Okay. So is this the bit where, because there's got to be a bit, because there is something where he ends up on a holiday island in prison, isn't there? So he's still retreating into France. He's rejected the armistice.
Everybody get into France.
Everybody piles into France.
Yeah.
He's fine.
British come over, British come over from the Pyrenees.
There's a bit of a Tour de France going on with all the allies.
Okay.
And Napoleon fights what's considered to be a brilliant campaign, but he's so outnumbered, he kind of loses, and the Allies take Paris, and he's got to abdicate. And
Wow.
he, instead of just shooting him, because he's an emperor, and you can't go around shooting emperors, it sets a bad precedent. That's when he's appointed king of
Alba.
Oh, what's the island?
Elba.
Alba, yes, king of Alba. So he's
Right.
allowed to retire to Alba with not very many people.
Right. So, so which army takes Paris then?
The
The
Russians.
Russians.
The Russians get to Paris in all their
Yeah.
like green uniforms and funny hats.
Yeah.
That must have been a bit of a culture clash for them. Are they? Did they?
Yeah, either
trash the place?
Cossacks were a particular point of interest for the Parisienne.
Oh, I imagine they were just out drinking and was that where they start chopping the heads off bottles of champagne with sabers? Is that a thing? Does that happen, or is that just round where I live? That's the thing. No, possibly not.
Just full of, I think.
I don't know when that started.
No, okay. It's the kind of thing.
Also,
drunk Cossacks
bear in
Paris would
mind-
do.
Bear in mind, Russian aristocrats can't speak Russian; they speak French.
So
it's
no
not
one
really-
notices.
Yeah.
So basically, for a while, Paris becomes like London now. It's just got the
Well,
entire
actually, it
Russian
became a bit more
aristocracy here.
well-behaved.
Yeah, and they're
But
all
with
like,
less.
Yeah, full of dodgy Russians, absolutely.
yeah, full of dodgy Russians. So do they kind of keep it, or do they just get rid of Napoleon and go off you go, lads?
Once Napoleon's sort of been packed off to Elba, packed his travelling trunks, being taken across to Elba, everybody goes back to their country.
They appoint Louis XVIII as King of France.
But Louis XVIII sounds like he might have been King of France already.
He
Or
was the
that,
grandson of the previous king, the one who lost his
Okay.
head.
Louis
if you're born-
XVI.
if you're called Louis XVIII, you're pretty set up for that job, aren't you? That must be a difficult interview.
Well, I think his name was Louis, and when he got appointed king, they went, "Oh, you're."
Oh, I
18th."
see.
But
So,
funnily enough, his dad.
I don't think
should
Louis
have been
XVIII was the name on his
17th.
birth certificate.
His dad should have been Louis XVII, but he never got to be King of France because of Napoleon. So Louis XVIII called himself the 18th rather than 17th, because his dad should have bloody well been king, even though he wasn't.
so they skipped a generation. So he basically was called Louis XVIII before he became king. So yeah, the interview theory works quite well. So and then they go, all right, you're king. Presumably that means you're friends with us. This bloke, we can't really cut his head off because that's awkward. We're sending him off to somewhere in Sicily or Sardinia or something on a little rock, and he stood on a rock, staring out to sea moodily.
No, that was later. This is a nice Mediterranean island near Genoa.
Elba's not.
Oh, so is this like a proper country at this time, almost?
It's
Or
a
a
little
baby?
island. When you think you'd run an island, it's probably got a couple of thousand people in it.
It's a small island, but it's in the Mediterranean. It's nice. It's where you would go for holiday, to be
Well,
perfect.
considering it was from Corsica in the first place, it's just like, going over staying at the neighbours.
All right. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's not
then
like the arse
ruling
end
them.
of it's not the arse end of nowhere.
Yeah.
Things
So
like
a lot of
that.
seafood.
That's-
It's probably a boat trip to Rome if you want to visit.
Okay, so he's
Yeah.
allowed to go out on shopping
Rome
trips
wasn't
and
that far away.
shopping trips
No,
and
he
stuff.
wasn't allowed. He was allowed to go out and about on the island.
Inspect his
But-
guard.
Well, he was the ruler of the island. He was in charge. He was given the island to be boss of.
But he's not allowed to leave it.
But he's not allowed to build like a 200,000 man army with like
But
loads of
he-
big
he
artillery
was-
training.
No.
Throwing his energy into the island to do different projects, different engineering projects and everything else. But then he got bored of that.
Right.
He
okay.
efficiently governed the arse off that island. Everybody,
Yeah.
he was like, he did really well.
Okay, he governed it to death for a while, for about what, 10 years?
No, about a year.
About a year.
No,
He got
no,
bored
more
in a
than
year.
But
He
Yeah.
got bored in it. Basically, he was in lockdown on socially isolating in a community that didn't have the whatever it was the
they
Republican.
didn't even have
No,
electricity.
didn't even have electricity. Okay, so I'm guessing there's a point at which he gives up on that, and then that's probably a good point to stop and look forward to next week.
Yep.
Yeah, but the reasons why it all kicked off in 1815, let's do next week because it's an interesting story.
Fine. Until next week, then. Well, it's all picking up now, isn't it? That wasn't quite such a melancholy end, because there's like a bright future for the boy when he gets off this island that we all know about for possibly a short period of time. But that's the Napoleonic Wars, I think. But from the Napoleonic Wars, it's probably time to go back in time to look at our army list selection, going into the deep and distant biblical past. And I'm just trying to think which list were we doing? Was it the Ugarus, the Uratu, Uvavu? Which one was it last week? Number 20, 22? 27. 22.
Dave.
Is it 22 or 27? Does anybody know?
27. 27. But someone might have picked up the wrong list.
I've misheard. Today's the 27th.
Right.
Last the 22nd.
So Dave, you've sent me an Ugarit list, number 22,
Yeah.
and Adam has sent a Uratu list, which is almost the same apart from a few letters different. Okay.
Sorry,
Well, look, I think in a new first for this feature, we will be comparing two utterly different lists from different countries or nations, and to see which one's the best. And then if Dave, I suspect, if yours is the best, you'll still lose anyway because you messed up. But rather than avoid this, let's try and plug our way through this and talk about it. So I will just do a quick share screen, and we will see what we've got here in Adam's.
Okay. Now, I've always liked Uratu because I remember reading about it in a very early edition of Miniature War Games, number 5 or something, that went on about it. And I was about 14 and I got all excited. But the problem with Uratian lists, and basically every game, every set of rules you've ever seen, is they're basically like the Assyrians, but a bit shitter. So you would sort of you actually just want to do the Assyrians, but I'm not allowed to, because this week we were doing list 27, Uratu, Dave. So this is it. And when I can't
believe it's not Assyrian. Yeah.
Well, I can believe it's not Assyrian. It's things like Assyrians get 4 elite knight chariots, Uratu gets 2. Assyrians get elite heavy cavalry bow, Uratu get medium cavalry bow ordinary. And it's just like a bit more rubbish, to be honest. So I've gone with one command with a brilliant general, and that's got the 2 heavy chariot impact elite, and 2 heavy swordsman armor elite. In biblical lists, anytime you can get stuff that's foot troops that are armor and elite, it's always worth getting, because they're always that much better than everybody else.
Tough, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because even if you sort of lose a dice roll, you go, +1 for elite, +1 for armor, it's a draw, which winds up the opponents. I've also got in this command 3 medium swordsmen and 3 light infantry javelin. And this command's job is hopefully there's going to be some rough or horrible terrain on the flank, because there near enough always is. So it anchors a flank with a medium swordsman, light javelinman. Extends that with a heavy swordsman armor elite, because it doesn't care about too much. And the heavy chariot impact elite, they're a reserve to be inserted somewhere soft and swishy. And the other 2 commands are exactly the same. They've both got 3 medium cavalry bow ordinary and 3 mixed troops, half medium swordsmen, half bowmen. And they basically go on the rest of the table and work together and just sort of try and pick apart an opponent. I'm not completely enamoured of this list, but it's just it could work, and it's just all right.
Yeah,
there you go. That's mine.
Yeah, no. So you because that's a lot of medium cavalry. Well, you've got a lot of shooting, and I guess in this period, you've got a real choice, haven't you? Either if the medium cavalry bow do get to avoid any enemy but archers, they're absolutely fine against light chariots and things like that as well. But if they come up against archers, you can stick the mixed swordman, mixed bowman, and I guess not many people will come with more than 6 of those sorts of bowmen. So you're kind of matching them, aren't you? Really, at least. And those 2 heavy swordsmen are pretty pokey as well. I don't know. Anybody else?
Is that 2 wings of cavalry and a centre of heavy chariots and infantry then? Yeah.
Well, Possibly, but what I prefer is to have the other command, the one with the heavy swordsman, on the flank, because usually on the flank you've got terrain on one side or the other. So that's where the medium swordsman and light infantry javelin go in, and they hold down that flank with support from the heavy swordsman armor elite and the chariot, the heavy impact chariot reserves, and then the other two commands play on the rest of the table. Because you've got troops that can go in rough and take advantage of it if it's there. You've got lots of cavalry to gallop about shooting at stuff. You've got a bow that can shoot at stuff. And even a half-medium swordsman, half bow, if I'm fighting against lots of bow, they're actually quite useful. So there's they sort of like, it's more the idea of the medium cavalry and medium foot commands work together rather than either flank. Now, obviously, if there's a lot of nasty terrain in the middle, you might put the first command in the middle and then have the two wings. But where they're a mirror, they can be quite flexible.
What I like is the fact that you've got troops that you can operate. Any of those commands have got an element that can work in terrain. If you don't get terrain, I think you're in serious trouble. The tweak I would make if I was using that army, given the list you've got, is I'd be inclined to swap some of the medium swordsmen in the first corps for some of the mixed units in the other corps, so that you've got a bit more shooting capability with the guys trying to hold the terrain. And also, they can soften up a potential target for the chariots or the heavy swordsmen to attack.
I'd almost go another extreme and just double down on the medium sword bowmen and just stick, have 6 and 6 with one medium cavalry bow mediocre each, and the other one with another 6 if you could do it, or depends on numbers or anything else, maybe 5 or 4, and have the 2 heavy chariot impacts, and then you just got to, you've got the ability to just blat out an awful lot of bow coming at everybody, stick down a whole bunch of terrain, and then just have your couple of heavy chariot impacts to then go in and exploit when you can.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the problem is that's even more taking I've got to get terrain in the right place, because if the terrain doesn't fall, there's so much that a medium swordsman bow can be vulnerable to. That's because you've got to have at least 6. But they're just too risky if it doesn't work, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
so I was hoping more for manoeuvre and getting into the right place.
Yeah, I think on Andy's point, I've tried in an Assyrian army having, 2 medium swordsmen, bowmen, and 1 medium swordsman, and you end up being neither fish nor fowl. Having that extra 1 doesn't give you that much more quality. It's like having 1 ordinary and 2 mediocre instead of, 3 mediocre in combat. I just found it looked really clever on paper, but I actually was just thinking, I wish I had, a bit like this. I want 3 swordsmen, they're going to attack stuff. I've got 3 bowmen, they're all going to try and stand off and shoot stuff. It just kind of, reduced your shooting a bit, so it didn't quite work out. It's whether, whether there's a way of perhaps squeezing more light infantry bow. Is there light infantry bow in this list to make?
Yeah, you can have a few, and you can swap them for the light infantry javelin. But I'm not, and I thought about that, but I just wasn't sure what they would bring. Whereas 3 light infantry javelin, if you get down down a steep hill or something, they actually become very, very useful. And the only terrain that this army's got is mountain. So if someone wants to attack me, they're attacking me in the mountains. So 3 light infantry javelins stood uphill on a steep hill is actually quite handy.
No, I think that's good. I think I was more meaning the light
infantry jav.
Sorry?
You can only have 2 light infantry jav.
Oh, can you? Oh, for fuck's sake. Excuse my language.
One of them will be a bowman, I'm sure. But I think if you had a couple more, whether it'd be worth swapping out one of those medium cavalry to put a couple of Lightfoot bow in just to make your shooters a little bit better, it's that's tweaking it a little bit, isn't it?
I'd swap out, as you only are in the mountains, you're probably going to end up defending most of the time, and if you're attacking, it suits you even better. But if you're defending in the mountains, you can use an awful lot of terrain to sort of cut it down. You can still, it's a negative having your medium troops in the mountains, but nobody can chase them with the chariots,
all.
and then you just have a couple of chariots for a couple of gaps.
Yeah, no, that would be fine. And I don't mind having medium troops and mountains because, as I say, it's like anything they'll be fighting probably is going down even more. But it's like, apart from those regular games where all the mountains ends up on my opponent's base edge.
Yeah, then you end up on a billiard table.
That's what would normally happen to me. But...
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, shall we have a flick over at Dave's I Can't Believe It's Not Uratu list and see what that one is then?
This means war.
Can I just say, sorry, before we go on, I just want to say about the Urartian army that it makes me think points costings for some troop types are very odd. Because I look at my army, it's only 22 big, and it's not full of good stuff, really, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's like
those medium cavalry bow look like they're a point too much in some ways, don't they?
Medium cavalry bow look very expensive. The mixed sword and bow look,
they're very expensive. Those ones.
Yeah. And you've got to have at least 6. So it's like, because when I was doing it, it's like, oh, that's all I get. So that was a bit surprising. So I think that list suffers from having quite a few overcosted troops.
Yeah, and if you're only having one or two of them, one or two medium cavalry to pad it out is fine. But if you've got 12, it feels like you've got 12 points too many. You could shave a point off all of those, couldn't you? Quite comfortably.
I think you've got to use the mixed medium infantry going forward to take shooting from the opponents and kick out the shooting, and use the medium cavalry bow to aid those guys shooting. So against mounted, you're pretty good actually.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you are. But again, those mixed for 9 points each. Yeah, they're just squishing up against too many things. That 9 points each for me is a good troop type, and
because you think of
they're that good.
Because being a mixed foot, they're mediocre in all melee. So yes, you can shoot out, but we all know since you're just swordsmen, even a spearman might think, "I'll have you." Yeah. Medium spearman might go, "I've got a big stick and I'm not mediocre. Poke, and I'm cheaper than you are. Poke."
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? All right. Well, let's have a look at Dave's Ugaritic I Can't Believe It's Not Uratu list that we have here. So, Dave, talk us through how you made such a terrible error. Talk us through this list, which clearly is drawing from a much better mix of troops than Uratu.
It's a better option of an army. I mean, Uratu is just a weak form of Syrian. In fact, I think that army's been downplayed because to make the Syrians look better. Because in historical places, these Syrians just beat up on the Uratu state on a continuous basis.
Okay. For hundreds of years. So how did Uratu and state survive?
Because it was in the mountains. It was around Lake Van in the very east of Turkey. And they supplied the horses to the Assyrians, so they traded their horses.
That's very clever, isn't it? We're going to give you loads of horses, then you'll turn into an all-mounted army, and then you can't attack us in the mountains.
Yeah, the Assyrians used to come and beat him up. They say, right, here, take a load of horses and F off.
All right, mate, take a load of horses and F off. That's it, bish-bosh. That's the Uratu language. So talk us through your Ugarit army then, Dave.
Ugarit, I Can't Believe It's Not Uratu.
Yeah.
Vic Reeves, blah, blah. I've got 4 heavy chariots, impetuous elite.
Of course, that's the law.
That's good.
They've got 3 javelin men to protect them so they can get in.
So there's a skin,
They've got a scout he's actually just there to give width, actually, because he's mediocre. So, I mean, hopefully going to get 4 chariots in and stick the light horse on the outside to say, oh, look, I've got an overlap.
Okay.
Then core 3, the 2 chariot, well, these are light chariots with bow, 2 elite and 2 non-elite. That's because, but the great thing about Ugarit list in biblical is you're allowed 6 elite chariots, which not many, if any, other armies are allowed. Most armies have 4 as a limit. So, you've got to have light chariots in this army, but those 4 light chariots there, they can mess around, hold down some open space. You could even put them down the middle so they just fall back while you fold in both wings. That's one plan. but the real working part of this is Claw 2, which is 14 bases.
Wow, that's
and you've got a brilliant general, but the real fun of it is you've got 3 medium swordsmen impetuous, 2 elite heavy swordsmen, and 2 elite medium swordsman impact. So you can be 7 wide. You know, you probably lead in with the medium sword impetuous and see if they do any damage. Then you go in with the next 4, and you've got javelin to give it all width again. And you've got my favourite mediocre bowman, which can work with the light chariots to shoot them in, sort of thing like that.
in a pair. That's an enormous.
I think this is a really good army, especially with 26 bases.
Which is again ludicrously more than. Although I suppose you have got 4. You've got 4 mediocre troops in there. No, 5 mediocre troops and same number of light infantry. No,
Yeah.
3 more light infantry. So yeah, 5 mediocres and 3 more light infantry to give you an extra 4 to Adams. Okay. Although if we are putting these 2 on the same table, I'm actually looking at this going, one of Adams' flanking commands will eat your 3rd corps of 4 light chariots. 3 medium cavalry and 3 of those mixed shooters will give that a right old shredding, really.
I think I'm going to pick on one of his commands. I'm going to go after his infantry, whilst keeping his 3 medium cavalry occupied with my 4 light chariots.
Yeah,
and I'm going to use the bowmen as I know they're mediocre bowmen, but I can use my bowmen to assist the chariots.
Hmm.
You might want to use that 3rd corps as a flanking corps.
Yeah, that's a definite one of the ideas of it. I mean, I used this in the 1-day competition at the club and came 2nd, and I was really pleased with it. I mean, the impetuous chariots are just what they do. They just run over things. But I think Core 2 I really like, with the combination of impetuous swords, impact swords, and heavy swordsman elite. You've got 4 elites there and 3 impetuous. So if it cracks,
you've got a lot of crud in there as well.
Yeah, it's filler. It's definitely filler. I mean, if all those medium swordsmen all hit together, you've got javelin and mediocre on the outside.
Yeah.
An overlap and things like that.
Yeah, and of course, if you can get them into the flank of people, it's actually going to hurt them. Yeah,
exactly. That's the plan. I love those 5-point weapons.
The thing is, though, if Adam's list gets his mountains and he parks these guys in the mountains shooting down, you're going to be a bit stuffed, aren't you?
Well, if he's on a steep hill, then he's medium infantry on a steep hill, disordered. I've got 3 light javelin.
Yeah, he's got more light javelins than Adam does.
Yeah, that's true. You can actually have a go at it. Wow. Okay. Even though we're
javelin.
Even though we're saying it's that is a really powerful central command. You've actually got 22 units in those first 2 commands, which makes your light chariot bow a bit of a bonus as well. Having the heavy. Well, were you tempted to kind of do a sort of similar thing to Adam, and your 4 heavy chariot command? I've used the Syrians with a 4 heavy chariot, delivery system, or actually I've used it kind of with an even smaller command with a 2, and kept 2 somewhere else. But is there not a point at which both of your commands, the 4 heavy chariots and some supporting foot, they're not supporting foot, they're screening skirmishers, and then your other one, which is just 4 light chariots, you've got everything in one command in the middle, whereas Adam can gang stuff up together in his. Were you not tempted to put a bit more stuff in with maybe the chariots or the light horse to try and balance it out a bit?
Nah.
No. Just go with like big command 14. It's 2 commands.
4 heavy chariots in a delivery system, especially as they're impetuous. They're going to win you the game or lose you the game to some degree.
Yeah.
Just roll up and flatten anything in front of you. I think that's what they do. Yeah.
What's the other possibilities? The 4 heavy chariots can be on one side. If you can support the heavy chariots with the light chariots, so you can give yourself what is essentially an 8 chariot frontage. Which is the delivery system for the heavy chariots, and then hopefully you know, if you're facing an opponent who's got 4 heavy chariots, you're always going to get overlaps on him.
Yeah.
That's kind of the plan. And if you don't want it that way around, you've got stuff in core 2 which can support either of the light chariots or the heavy chariots and bring troops to them.
Well, Dave, you see, against one of Adam's corps, you could line up your heavy chariots with the light infantry in front to start charging the medium foot, and your 4 chariots are going to overmatch his 3 medium cavalry.
Yeah, well, they're going to smash his medium sword. Sorry, Adam, they're going to run over your medium cavalry.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you.
Infantry bow, because I'm going to sacrifice my light foot to get the 4 heavy chariots into. You know, say, you know, I might have to occupy if you're putting down a hard surface on one edge to line up your medium infantry with armor. I'll just match that with command 1, and then use command 2, and then command 1 and 3 on the outside to take on your medium cavalry and medium bowmen.
I mean, because what I would say is, like what I said earlier, it's like you've got heavy chariot, impetuous elite, costs 12 points, and I've got mixed bow, medium foot that costs 9.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's not out of kilter, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, you could you you know, just try to think of a way.
It's difficult because in some circumstances, a mass formation of those. I mean, I think one of the problems is they're medium sword with bow.
Yeah.
Whereas in some armies, you get medium spear with bow. And
absolutely, that would make them better.
That would make them. It would make them better. And I think there's a thing in the biblicals that they don't like to give troops. I mean, they don't like to give troops spear, and unfortunately, that makes them like they just fodder for their heavy chariots.
Yeah, no, I am still looking at it, wondering. You know, one of your flanking commands, if you sacrificed or accepted the loss of the infantry to those 4 heavy chariots, whether that, you know, gives your cavalry room to kind of get around the back and do anything. That middle command, you know, I think there's in theory a matchup. You know, your 3 swordsmen take on the 3 impetuous swordsmen, which is a bit of a wash. Your chariot takes on the medium swordsman impact and beats it, and your heavy swordsmen are better than the ones here. But then there's still 4 or 5 other troops floating around doing stuff. And I think that light chariot, you'd have to get in really quickly with one of your other flanking commands to those light chariot and drive them back. But that kind of says that you need to be attacking, in which case you've not necessarily got that mountain terrain.
Well, it's a tough, isn't it? They've both got an initiative of 1.
Yeah, which is a lottery, isn't it?
I think the light chariot command will be toast against me, but I just don't see how my army manages the other 2 commands.
Because the rest of my army is the same size as your army.
There's the whole thing. Yeah, you're deploying 6, and that's only leaving you with
take out the 4 chariots,
16.
With your 22.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it's slightly surreal to have a vote on it, and you know, maybe we should put in kind of some sort of penalty to Dave. Possibly we should make him that's too complicated. But I think if we just kind of, I don't know, anybody else got any other comments on this, or shall we just run down it and decide that this list is a better list than the Uratu list?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I would say.
Ugarit beats.
Show of hands. I think. Show of hands. I think we're all Syrian, Cananian, and Ugaritics, and the Uratus.
You wouldn't often see a Uratu army in a competition. I don't know.
But the thing is, we know that Dave would take this to a competition, would lose with it, and we'd spend the trip back on the car, him telling us why he brought the wrong list anyway. So
that could be it. He'd be saying he should have brought the proper Assyrians, really. The Ugarit's a poor man's Assyrian, and the Uratu's a poor man's Ugarit. So there's
I'd love to know where the lists get these Medjugorje guardians. I mean, I know a bit about Ugarit history. Ugarit was destroyed because they sent their army to fight with the Egyptians. And while their army was away, they got sacked by the Sea Peoples. And there were letters saying, "Give us back our troops quick because we're being sacked." But I'd love to know where all the troops were.
What, the Medjugorje? Are you sure that's the correct spelling? It looks like you just bashed your keyboard at random.
I copied it right. I mean, basically, there's the Sherdans, which are Sea People, and I think there's some sort of like guardsmen. It's an interesting, some interesting troop types, which I think come from Phil.
I've met a girl. I think they might have been sea peoples.
I think they are sea people. Yeah.
Oh, they're the heavy infantry sea people.
Way that you got mesh.
Like the Meshwesh and the Sheridan and the...
Yeah.
Oh, well. No, that does remind me. I do have a whole Sea People's Army that I don't think I've ever actually put on table as well. Oh, that's not even painted during lockdown.
I once played John, what's his name? The one who owns the miniatures company.
John Roberts.
Yeah. With Sea Peoples, using my Hebrews, and I beat him. He decided, I'm going to change the name from Sea Peoples to Wet Wipes.
Right. They were wet and they were wiped out. Okay. Well, on that note then, definitely time to draw a veil under this slightly smacks of incompetent iteration of our army list comparison. So sorry, Adam, you gave it a good old go. I think it's a very good way of putting together that list, but unfortunately we don't think it's as good as a list that shouldn't have been put up against you as competition, which I guess is a little bit like what appears to have just happened with Niskin's Cabano getting a 90-something minute 91st minute goal to give Fulham a 2-0 lead going into the second leg. So, and I think the Syrian Canaan and Ugaritic definitely have a 2-0 lead, even if they managed to get through the first leg against the Uratu.
This means war.
Yes, and as is traditional, we after playing that music at the end of the section, we then remember that we've forgotten to check what list we're doing next week. In this podcast, I got too excited about Fulham possibly getting, definitely getting a 2-0 first leg lead into the playoffs, which obviously may actually be all over by the time that this comes out at the end of this week. So enough of my Fulham talk, really. I'll cut that short. Simon, have you got the magic computer, the screen open?
I do.
I'll do the sound effects for you while you press the button.
List 120, Chinese,
120.
Chinese Northern and Southern dynasties.
That's
Another classic.
That's a proper one, isn't it? That's a really
They have
good
an
one.
elephant.
It's got an elephant.
It has one elephant.
If you choose that option. Okay. then.
Yep.
Loads of different versions.
So who wants to put their hands up for a Chinese next week? Chinese, number
Go on.
120.
I'll have a go. Yeah.
Mr. Webb, you're on it.
Yeah.
Mr. Webb, shall I join you?
Simon, you've got a 20 mil
absolutely.
army. It's got to be you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it
So it's
does,
a-
yeah.
So it's a Webb Leroy Mayer special next week as we round up and do the Chinese Northern and Southern dynasties. Fantastic,
Right.
which must mean having remembered to do the section that we always forget to do, and now having remembered to do it, the only thing, or almost the only thing left to do is roll straight into Andy's quiz.
Question. Comment les voir? Question. La trou est sans fond? Question. La légende le dit? Question. Elle dit aussi? Question. C'est une maladie? Question.
Muppet show over for another week, boys and girls. And so, Andy, last week was last week something about swearing, or am I
Yes, it was
dredging
called,
that?
last week was called Language, Timothy.
Excellent.
And I asked you which historical generals used the following naughty words. First one was, at the Battle of Eylau in 1807, this commander of the French Imperial Guard Cavalry said to his troops, when they were being struck by occasional stray musket balls, on haute les têtes, la mitraille n'est pas de la merde, which basically means, keep your heads up, these are bullets, not turds.
Okay.
Anyone new?
Not a clue, I'm afraid. Anybody else?
His name was General Lepic,
Le Pic.
right? The second Lepic, L-E-P-I-C. And
Not
at the
like,
Battle of
not like
Fuente
Don't
de
Tell Him.
Lenoro in Portugal.
Not like Don't Tell Him, Le
No,
Pic.
it didn't.
That's a different one.
Lepic, that's right, yeah. Yeah, I don't think he wore a scarf, that's the only thing.
Okay.
Right. At the Battle of Waterloo, when called on to surrender, which Imperial Guard commander gave a disdainful reply? There's two versions what he's reputed to have said. One is, La garde meurt, mais il ne se rend pas, which means the guard dies, but it doesn't surrender. And the other version is merde. Anyone heard of this guy?
Le Pic.
He was Cambron.
Cambron. Isn't he a name
Yeah.
like cheese? No? Possibly now. Smelly cheese. Nerdy cheese.
He's what?
Okay. Is he a make
That's
of
camembert.
cheese? Camembert,
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay, right. Then moving to World War II, which American general, when called upon to surrender the town of Bastogne to the surrounding Germans in December 1944 in the Battle of the Bulge, replied, nuts?
McAuliffe.
Correct.
Ah, we've got one.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me about that, though, is there's a set of skirmish rules, World War II, called nuts. Someone, obviously, after that. And I know for English that's all right, it's nuts. But it would be like us writing a setting of rules and calling it bollocks.
Yeah.
Which, for a name of a set of rules, it is a bit weird, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a parachute general. He was in command of an armoured, parachute brigade or a parachute division, one of the two.
You could just call the rules Rollocks or something, because there is water tanker, isn't there? You know, and that's pretty close.
Well, I decided to got another set of rules, troops, weapons and tactics.
Well, yes. Yeah, I think I played plenty of sets of rules like that in my time. Okay.
Bastogne is actually called Nut City to the Americans. A bit weird if you actually called it Bollocks City.
It would for us. But Andy, hit us with next week's questions.
Well, no, there was a bonus question last week, if you remember.
Bonus question, of course.
Yeah, and it was, I played you a track from a Sharp movie, and apart from Bernard Cornwell, you hear one other, sorry, not Bernard Cornwell, Sean Bean, you hear somebody else speak, who's Patrick Harper, and I want to know who was the name of the actor who played Patrick Harper, but I'll just remind you of the soundtrack.
What an idiot. What a dirty little Dutch ruffle-brained bastard. From his pox crown up his royal pox arse. A blue-blooded twat. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
So who's saying, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear?
Dara O'Malley.
Well done. Go to the top of the class, Tamsin.
The bloke read the same, Pat.
Was he?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, well, I didn't know that, but he was definitely Dara O'Malley.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond? Question, la légende le dit? Question, elle dit aussi? Question, c'est une maladie? Question.
Right, so next week's quiz the theme is, there was this Irishman. Okay, so who are the following three gentlemen of Irish birth or ancestry? Number one, the British general who, on being reminded of the fact he was born in Ireland, replied, being born in a stable doesn't make you a horse.
Okay.
Number two, the American general who was appointed as military governor of Texas after the Civil War, and who once commented that if he owned hell in Texas, he'd rent out Texas and live in hell.
It does get hot, yep.
Yeah. And number three, the British admiral who, on being advised to stop sending his ships to Crete to help evacuate the British forces in 1941 because of mounting losses to air attack, replied, it takes the Navy 3 years to build a ship, but it will take 300 years to build a new tradition. The evacuation will continue.
Bold and solid. Good for a submariner as well, possibly. Okay then. Well, look, we've got some good answers to look forward to next week.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond? Question, la légende le dit? Question, elle dit aussi? Question, c'est une maladie? Question.
Okay then. Well, look, we're into the final straight now then, which is I guess first of all to remind everybody that next week we're going to do a unique feature to replace something to try and recap on everything that we painted in the last 20 weeks. I have a suspicion that might take longer than 2 hours in its own right, but let's see if we can rattle through that as well as we come to it. But as we go into this final week of the 20-part lockdown special series, it's just a question: what's on your painting table, your gaming to-do list for the next week? So, Simon, what's first up for you?
Scaringly, I've got nothing on the painting table this week. So I think a miniature order needs to be done.
Okay, I'll order those main force infantry for you. That is the prompt for me to get that sorted. All right, Saunders. What about you? You still Breton sweatering till you've got 50 bases?
There's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's about 7 bases of heavy, impetuous foot with stripy jumpers on the painting table.
Okay.
But I might pull up something different just to be a bit different, I think. Give myself a break from impetuous foot.
Impetuous sweaty foot. Okay. Sweaty feet. Andy, what about you?
I'm not going to be painting my sweaty feet, but I'm going to be finishing off the Thracians. And then, because I'm going away on holiday next week, although I'll be taking part in the podcast, and I'll be taking my 25mm stuff to spray black and stick together and stuff, I probably need somebody to keep me entertained for a little while.
So you're going to be
spare time. So I'll probably do a Greek temple.
Okay, so you're actually going to be
I'm going to be deepest dark.
Assembling and undercoating plastic figures on the beach in Cornwall when you're on holiday.
Well, no, this is out in the garden of the barn we're renting in Wales.
Oh, right, Wales. Well, if it's Wales, that's fine then, yeah.
If I tried that, my wife would probably stab me.
Well, that is a risk, but she did say, "Oh, you can, she just wants to see different four walls for a week and get away." We were supposed to be going to Normandy, but for various reasons, we kind of chickened out of going there. And so she's got a friend who's got this place as a barn, and they're doing it up to live in. So they rent it out. So we're going to go there. And she said, "You can bring some paints, and you can sit and paint, and I'll chill out and whatever."
Okay.
So that was all fine. And then I got the boxes that I was going to bring. She said, "You're bringing all that?" And
bringing all that? My God, we're taking the bloody Normans to invade Wales.
Not the first time it's happened.
Again.
Right,
No,
quite right.
They didn't get the hint first time round.
No.
They'll be lucky if they don't get flushed down the Usk.
Yeah.
Right, Damien's nearby to get some more.
Oh, I think we got a new theme
Unfortunately,
tune.
Damien's not open to visitors. I already checked that out.
I think we got a quote for the advert then that we'll be putting out midweek. I think that's a new one.
Flush down the Usk.
Yeah, you don't want to be flushed down the Usk, do you? Right.
So now we've got Andy's new team name, Flush Down the Usk.
Flush down the Usk. Yes. Pete,
By a badger.
flush down the Usk by a badger. Peter, now we're talking about toilet brushes. What are you painting this week?
Well, with my painting style, I might as well be using a toilet brush. I'm going to be finishing off my Spanish nights because I've just got a lot on at the moment. So it's just I chip away at them when I can, odd hour here and there. So hopefully by next Monday, I should have actually got them finished off. Lots of distractions at the moment.
Right. Okay.
Are you doing the badger banners for them?
Yes,
Le
absolutely.
Badger.
Well, I've got to find a decent military order that's not too horrific.
Too bad.
When you look at the Spanish military orders, any suggestions taken?
Santiago.
We'll have a quiz. All right. Tamsin, what are you... No, you said you got some figures that you're
I've
starting.
got a lot of figures to prep.
Yep.
I have the infamy, and I've got a load more scatter terrain for the Judge Dredd projects.
Okay.
So I'll be doing
15s, 28s, all you're doing a bit of everything then. Bit of everything. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Adam, what about you? You were saying you were coming a bit to an end of something.
Yeah, gluing together, spray painting and painting some more Roman legionaries.
And have you been, while we're doing this, have you been clicking away in the background to try and decide which Sarmatian cataphract figures you go for, or is that something you're saving for tomorrow?
I'll save that for tomorrow. That would involve multitasking, doing two things at once. And I find it hard enough to walk and talk. So, I'll save that for tomorrow.
Good. I think from my point of view, it is going to be back to that wall-to-wall horses, although I do have one single Malifaux figure that arrived a bit later than all the rest of them, Dr. Andrei Sokolov, who special edition, who is now prepped and undercoated black and ready to go with his mechanical arm and two enormous sort of slightly weird, you would be arrested for carrying them swords, which I guess you would be arrested for carrying most swords, to be fair. So that's kind of going to be on my to-do list, but mostly a horse-based thing. It is going to be another week of that whole weird thing about the horses. So on that note, I think it's
before we go.
There's more. There's more.
No, I was just thinking for the Grey Badger's Holy Order, you could have the Ordon Sagrada del Tejon Gris, the Holy Order of the Grey Badger.
The Grey Badger. Yes.
Nice. I like it.
That could be it. I'll try and get some water slide transfers made up for you. See if we can send some over to put on. That could be it.
Yeah. I could do with some 25mm shields, medieval shields.
What, badger-based ones? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that maybe is my. And actually, one other thing. Yes, this week I'm also going to just inspired, I think, slightly by Taylor Swift, who dropped a complete album this week with no fanfare or preparation at all, just into the market. I may actually just drop 3 battle reports into the internet with no warning whatsoever, because I've just about finished them. I've just got a couple of maps to tweak and a few more kind of poor quality I'm in America gags to slide in, and I think they may hit the shelves, or the shelves of Facebook and all the other places later on this week as well.
Tim, I thought you were just suddenly going to slide in there and drop in that you just brought a 10mm British Army for the Napoleonics.
Still not. I've still avoided that. I've nearly bought a 50mm Carolingian army. I've priced it up and nearly bought it, because owning 2 bases of the figures to start with, and then going, well, I might.
You're already halfway there.
Halfway there.
Rude not to finish them up.
I've still not delivered your Carolingians, have I?
No, that's it. I have actually bought some of them already. I just need to buy the rest, buy the comedy infantry and do that. So yes, I'd even forgotten half starting it. So it's looking good. We'll all be ready to rock and roll on that one. So for our final in this limited series painting report next week, to see how well we've all done. So thank you, everybody. Good night, and as we always do, stay safe out there in lockdown world. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Police circling my house.
What have you done this time? Yeah, what have you done this time?
No, I've got a police helicopter. He's definitely circling.
Right, they're tracking down. You've painted too many Breton shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. That could be the answer.
They'll be lucky if they don't get flushed down the usk.